After raising a sick villain, I jumped into the sea and died. I was supposed to go back to the real world, but I was reborn as a villain's teenager. The system told me again to raise a villain. Is it possible that I have already raised it once? Looking at the injured villain, I have a headache. But he hugged me. I'll be good this time, don't you leave me, okay? Looking at the slightly green Andrew Red, I reached out and pinched his pale face. Why did you come along? If this sociopath were to go to the real world. Andrew Red stared at me like he hadn't seen me in a long time. I finally figured something was wrong. It's not the real world at all. It's Andrew Reed's home. It's still a small dilapidated house from his high school days. I turned around and whispered, "System, dare to trick me. The system is like a human machine. Hello host, your task is to raise villains, and promote the development of the plot." I gritted my teeth. Is it possible that I've already raised it once? System, kiss. The progress is not displayed. Who cleared the strategy progress for me? Does that mean I'm going to do this again? System, complete the strategy task to get the reward, and open the reality channel, dear. It's like a personal machine. Kiss your head. I turned to look at Andrew Red, who was staring at me, like he was being beaten up stupidly. His eyes were red, and his hands were trembling slightly. I've never seen him like this. How does it look like he's going to cry? What is he doing? It should be the first time I met him, and I didn't see him so calmly in my last life. At that time, he was obviously beaten with a blue nose and swollen face, and he couldn't open the door. I don't need the medicine I bought. I squatted in front of his house for a few days, and he couldn't stand the fever anymore, so I had a chance. When Andrew Red, who was a teenager, was sent to the hospital to stitch the wound, he gritted his teeth and cheeks, and was stunned. Why does it look like I'm going to cry now? Silent howl in my heart. Is there an end? I impatiently asked Andrew Red according to the plot. Are you going to the hospital? He nodded, looking very obedient. It's not as difficult as in the previous life, and I always feel weird. The system is so unreliable. I'm going to give you a bad review. His face was now covered in blood, but his eyes were unusually bright, and he looked pitiful. All in all, it's very different from the Andrew Red I remember. In his previous life, he had an inexplicable desire to control everything around him, including me. He often sent bodyguards to follow me, and if he didn't get news about me in time, he could dismiss the bodyguards and smash the bedroom again. Afterwards, he asked me very lightly whether I would eat at home or go out to eat in the evening. I'm afraid he'll smash me one day. In short, Andrew Red could not have made such a pitiful appearance. I took a few steps back. Then you can go to the hospital yourself. I don't know if it's my delusion. Andrew Reed's expression seemed to freeze for a second. He blinked when he was almost about to coincide with Andrew Red in his previous life. Then he put on an aggrieved expression. My leg is injured, sister, I can't walk, I hurt. My heart felt like it had been pinched. Isn't that what I wanted Andrew Red to look like in my last life? Good student, cute and painful, a bite of a sister. He sat against the wall and sighed, said slowly, it's okay, if my sister is busy, I'll sit here. The wound should heal automatically in 10 days and half a month. I'm fine, it's not really painful. Hiss. After saying that, he sobbed a little, covering the corners of his mouth that was oozing blood. Okay, now I'm completely loose. I held out my hand to him. Let's go, I'll take you to the hospital. Ambulances are too expensive. He was already a tall high school student, his right hand around my neck, and his whole body was leaning loosely against me. He didn't put all the weight on me. But I still had some trouble walking. Older buildings do not have elevators. On the way downstairs, Andrew Red was very uncoordinated, and it seemed that the whole person was drilling into my neck socket. Compared to the weight added to me, I just feel that this person's breath is so hot. The neck is so itchy. Hold your breath. Look at the road. Andrew Red looked at me, and said, oh, the results of the examination are similar to those in the previous life, and you still have to get stitches. I wiped my sweat and turned to walk outside the doctor's office. Sister, I'm sick. A faint voice came from behind him. Is this still Andrew Red? In my previous life, more than a dozen stitches were sewn on my thighs, and I didn't say a word. Now you tell me I'm sick. The doctor looked at me. Just stay here, my family, and calm the patient. I glared at Andrew Red. The villain, Andrew Red, who had just singled out a dozen people, and took on the white blade with his bare hands, was now leaning weakly on my shoulder. Need me to appease him? I pretended to pat him on the back. "Ah, the world is mad." At an angle I didn't notice, the corners of Andrew Reed's mouth curled up. After the stitches, it disappeared again. When he got home, Andrew Red pulled the lock and turned to look at me. "It's okay, sister, the debtor shouldn't be coming to the door these days. I'm fine here alone." So I took him upstairs again. My home. Oh ancestors. I suddenly felt that in my previous life, Andrew Red was not a little crazy and didn't bother people, which was also good. When he arrived at my house, he cried out that he was hungry as soon as he changed into his slippers. I don't know how to cook. I really don't know how to cook. I cooked a meal for Andrew Red in my last life. He ate silently, and I silently poured my share. Then I ordered myself takeout. I just picked up my phone, and was ready to order takeout. Andrew Red jumped into the kitchen step by step. "Sister, you take me in, I'll cook." I'm in ecstasy. Andrew Red, the big guy who turned the clouds in the capital in his previous life, actually wants to cook for me. This time, instead of smashing things, he cooked for me. The system also hesitated. Is Andrew Red really a sick villain? I've been suspicious since he fainted. Really, system, the world has gone mad. Okay, open the reality channel for me. Dear, I've checked with the programmer, and there is no problem with the progress of the task. 0069, I'm going to give you a bad review. The system was shocked. Dear, how do you know my code name? In my last life, I succeeded in my mission, and when I died, it was you who told me your code name, and asked me to give you a good review. After I clicked a 5-star in the air, I was actually reborn. Nest fire. But when I saw Andrew Red obediently bring 2 bowls of egg noodles with tomatoes, I was dumbfounded. The tomatoes are even peeled. This looks familiar. Andrew Red handed me a pair of chopsticks and sat down across from me to eat. I was really hungry this afternoon. What does this taste like? Sure enough, the taste is so familiar. Isn't this Dinah's egg noodles with tomatoes? In my life, I always quarreled with Andrew Red because of his ruthless behavior, and I was really afraid that he would eat a gun one day. After the fight, he smashed the bedroom. I hid in the other bedroom and sulked. In the end, Dinah told me to come down to dinner, and I put on a stinky face for Andrew Red down the stairs. Several times, it was tomato egg noodles. Dinah explained that it was because the family was so noisy that she didn't dare to go out to buy groceries. I'm afraid that as soon as she goes out, there will be one less person in the house. I took a sip, and memories flooded back to me. He looked at Andrew Red again and thought to himself, what did he learn from Dinah? It should be for the heroine to learn, and the heroine should be very gentle and hang this set. Andrew Red is a scholar, and he disguises himself as whatever the male protagonist looks like. Now Andrew Red, a high school student, noticed my gaze, and he had an inexplicable look in him. Asked, "Is it delicious?" I pursed my mouth. "General." Oh. He was a little lost. "Actually, I really think it's delicious. The noodle soup is clear, but the flavor is strong. The eggs are also smooth and tender, and they rot when you suck them." In my previous life, Dinah also asked me if it was delicious, and I naturally said, "It's delicious, I like to eat it." Dinah smiled, and Andrew Reed's face didn't seem to stink that much. Andrew Red in this life is very discerning. After eating, I went to brush the dishes. I was fed and sat on the couch watching Andrew Red limp in and out. I don't have any intention of helping. Why should I raise him? You've been tired enough in your last life, okay? Is still young and obedient, and now Andrew Red is also very happy to be busy with housework, and there is no black face in the whole process? That was until he walked to the bathroom door, and looked at me cautiously several times. "Do what? Sister, I don't have clean clothes." I snorted. "I just praised you in my heart." I pulled out a wide dressing gown, and threw it at him. Andrew Red leaned against the bathroom door, his hand clutching the bathrobe, sniffing it right under my nose. "It's so fragrant, sister." I blushed. Turn around and continue watching boring variety shows. The sound of water in the bathroom is getting louder and louder. I think back to my last life, and it's not that I didn't have a crooked mind about Andrew Red. He socialized a lot, and after drinking it was the middle of the night, and our bedroom was very close. At one point, he may have made a mistake and put his arms round me as soon as he got into bed. I didn't break free. Slowly, I felt his reaction somewhere, and it was particularly hot. At that time, he was already an upstart in the Beijing circle. Later, I don't know how to get together. Early the next morning, I slipped out and made the illusion that I hadn't been home yesterday. Andrew Red didn't seem to be anything unusual the next day. If I knew I was going to jump into the sea, I might as well have done everything. Jump happily again. Just as I was thinking of this, a muffled noise came from the bathroom. I hurried over. Are you all right? I'm fine. I just can't get up. As soon as I opened the door in a hurry, I saw Andrew Red, whose bathrobe was not even fastened. The fog is thick, but it can't cover the thin muscles and mermaid line. Andrew Reed's eyes were deep, as if he wanted to seek some kind of help from me. The voice was hoarse. Sister, you're a troublemaker. In the fog, I walked over with my eyes half squinted, for fear of seeing something I shouldn't see. I don't know if it's my delusion, but Andrew Reed's eyes seemed to be glued to me. Is this man ashamed? Sensing his gaze, I just felt panicked. It's him who has no clothes on. Why is it me, who is so ashamed? I gritted my teeth and said, close your eyes. Oh. Andrew Red slowly closed his eyes as I removed my bathrobe from the wall. After covering Andrew Red, reached for him. As soon as I touched his arm, my hand jumped. It's stained with some water mist, and it seems to be particularly easy to touch. Tut! I looked at Andrew Red with his eyes closed. His eyebrows and eyes were moist, and he didn't have the coldness that came out of his eyes, like Andrew Red in his previous life, and now he looked very close. I helped him to the couch. The wound on his leg seemed to be oozing blood again. I took a cool breath. Andrew Red looked stupid, his eyes still closed, and his whole body was half leaning on me. I broke free and went to get the medicine kit. Medicate yourself. Andrew Red still had his eyes closed, rubbing slowly in the same position he had just taken, as if wondering why his surroundings were empty. Are you stupid? After saying this, I regretted it. I actually asked if the villain after was stupid. Sister, can I open my eyes now? I was stunned for a second. It turned out that he was still waiting for me to tell him to open his eyes. I hummed before he opened his frighteningly bright eyes. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was to catch me, and then he looked at his slowly bleeding leg as if he were relieved. I couldn't help but ask, why are you so obedient? Forget it. What about being obedient now because of my meal? After that, it wasn't because the female protagonist was jealous that she had a lot of trouble with the male protagonist. What? Andrew Red seemed looking forward to what I asked him. I shook my head and handed him the medicine kit. But he pulled me by the hand. Sister, I'm obedient this time. Don't you leave me? Okay. He seemed to know what I was thinking. Andrew Red before him won't be weak. He will only use the sharpest fangs to scare the people around him. I lay on the bed and tossed and turned. What went wrong? I remember confirming with the system before I jumped into the sea and escaped that I would definitely return to the real world. But why was he reborn as a teenager in Andrew Red? Why do it again? I remember saying goodbye to Andrew Red on the phone before I died. He just didn't feel emotional and said, oh, then you die. I looked at the calm sea and smiled. From Andrew Reed 17 years old to 27 years old. 10 years in exchange for only such a sentence. To be honest, it hurts. I was still a little scared to jump into the sea. But this sentence from Andrew Red seemed to give me endless courage. The next day I was awakened by incense. I rubbed my eyes and subconsciously said to Andrew Red at the table, where's Dinah? Andrew Red suddenly looked up. What? I almost bit my tongue before I realized it was Andrew Red from high school. Picked up the milk at hand and most of it, explaining, I made an appointment with the aunt who came to clean today, named Dinah. Didn't you come? I thought it was a seamless explanation, but I saw Andrew Reed's hands shaking. His eyes were red and he kept staring at me. It's weird and scary. He doesn't know who Dinah is, and he reacts so much. Finally, he turned his head and said slowly, don't call Auntie, I'll clean up. Oh, It turned out that he was afraid that I would waste money. Also, we're both poor now. After breakfast, Andrew Red cleaned up without saying a word. I was on the couch figuring out how I could make money. Since the system has repeatedly promised me to raise a villain, it will definitely open a reality channel for me. Plus Andrew Red is now well behaved and obedient. I became less repulsed by the idea of raising him again. I want to drink water. Apples. I lay down on the couch and called him. And Andrew Red didn't change his face the whole time. The system shook his teeth. He's my villain. I used to live with Andrew Red, and it was too luxurious. It is difficult to go from luxury to frugality. Andrew Red went to school early in the morning, and I was even more worried about what to eat today, because I found that I didn't have enough money to order takeout. It's all Andrew Red. I paid for the hospital in advance. I don't want to go to class. Rice is not to be made. I can't help but wonder how I supported me and Andrew Red in my last life. Oh yes, it seems to have sold the Andrew Red family's house. Andrew Red came back at that time to see the real estate agent's face blacken. But when I settled with him about his food, drink, shelter and transportation, he compromised. Now that I think about it, he hated me back then. That's what his mom left him. I was irritable and pacing in a house of dozens of square meters. My house was definitely not for sale. It's the only place I can stay in this virtual world. After a few dry howls, I took my resume and went looking for a job. I still overestimated the conscience of the system, and given my high school degree, I could only find the work of the princess of the clubhouse and the eldest sister of the bathhouse. It was getting dark, and I bought a bottle of water with the only 2 yuan I had left. You still can't be too conscientious. Contact the real estate agent tomorrow. The voice-activated lights in the hallway are not lit all year round, and I am still startled by those bright eyes. Where have you been? The sudden questioning was annoying when I didn't find a job, and my anger gushed out in an instant. Whatever. And so it is again. In my previous life, Andrew Red was like a neurotic. I just went out to visit a store, bought a bag, and he had to make several phone calls if I came home later than him. That's how he asked me. Later, he apologized to me, saying that he was just too stressed at work. I also understood, and said that I would spend a little less. But after a long time, I realized that I had a location installed on my phone. Now it's only been a few days, and he's like that again. The voice-activated lights came on without warning, and I saw the calm face of Andrew Red, who was a head taller than me. It's scary. Is there a royal law? I ignored him and took out the key to open the door, but he reached out against the door, and I thought he was going to quarrel again. Look back at him menacingly. He said slowly, I'm sorry, I can't get in without a key. I'm just a little worried that you haven't eaten. Although his tone sounded awkward, but he was apologizing. Andrew Red is apologizing. By the time I could react, Andrew Red had already walked in. It was natural to turn on the lights and go into the kitchen. He also carried a bag of ingredients in his hand. Why did he suddenly turn off the fire? Although I was angry, I still cooked 2 large bowls of rice without arguing. Sigh while eating. Andrew Reed's ability to learn is so strong that in just a few days, his skills are similar to those of Dinah in his previous life. I'm good at the Cold War, and I'm going to sell the Andrew Red house tomorrow. Having eaten enough and was sleepy on the couch, Andrew Red walked over. I was a little confused. In the Cold War, you are not allowed to speak. He paused, and sure enough, he didn't speak. Then he handed over a wad of things. My mind slowly recounted what it was, and it took a long time to find my voice. You robbed. I've never seen so much cash. Andrew Red just looked at me quietly, and didn't speak. My head is booming. I guessed right. How can there be such a kind of person going for a robbery in high school? I reacted. I bought the prawns I just ate with that money. Am I an accomplice? Andrew Red didn't speak, but suddenly smiled. I rarely saw him laugh, and I didn't feel good. I know that the villain has done something illegal and criminal, and I will not be allowed to testify to the police alive. I quietly moved to the side. You're really... Can I speak? Sister, I'm going to be laughed at. He still remembers what I just told him not to speak. Is there a tendon missing? After getting my permission, he said, I sold the house. It's not a robbery. It scared me to death. What? He sold the house. This shocked me more than he went to rob. Before, So many debtors blocked his house, and asked him to hand over the real estate certificate, but he didn't give it. This is the house his mother left behind. I sold this house in my last life, and although he didn't quarrel with me, he also had a Cold War period for many months. But now he actually took the initiative to sell the house. How much did it sell? He has this brain. But don't lose it. 750,000. I was dumbfounded. And I actually sold 100,000 more than in my previous life. I silently tore up my high school diploma resume. Andrew read, "You don't have a place to live now. You have to pay me 200,000 yuan in rent." Why 200,000? Because I know that he has to pay off his father's gambling debts, which are 550,000. Okay. Andrew Red put the wad of cash in my hand and said, "The buyer will be crediting your account in a few days." How do you know my account? And why are you? I had already planned to coerce and induce me to carry the money from the sale of the house in my hands like I did in my previous life. But Andrew Red deprived me of all means. Maybe you didn't even notice that you had all the important stuff under the bed. There's your card in it. Memories of past lives suddenly flashed back. Andrew Red slowly became irritable and irritable. I've said more than once that he's crazy, especially after I found out the location he installed on my phone. We had a big fight over it, and he directly restricted my freedom. He said it made me reflect. I'm reflecting on a fart. In the villa, the yard was full of bodyguards. In Dinah's words, "No White House has been so heavily guarded at home." Dinah reports to Andrew Red every day when she buys groceries. Until that day, Andrew Red got drunk and came to my bedroom. After we kissed, we hugged each other and slept, and the next day I ran out. But from that night onwards, I was able to come and go as I pleased. Only occasionally bodyguards followed me. I threw the bag and clothes I had just bought to the bodyguard in the back. During that time, the whole city was indeed not peaceful. So, Andrew Red sent bodyguards to follow me, but they didn't restrict any of my actions, and I didn't quarrel with him. After a quiet day, Andrew Reed's birthday is approaching. I thought about showing favor to him if I bought back the house I had sold. Andrew Red probably wouldn't be so irritable with me. I deliberately got rid of the bodyguard, and connected with the real estate agent back then. When I finished the formalities, I saw a black press kneeling outside the villa. The bodyguards who followed me before were all shocking wounds, and Andrew Red just sat on the couch and made a call, so the police don't have to look for it. They're back. He glanced at me from top to bottom, but asked lightly, "Have you eaten dinner?" I trembled uncontrollably. "Are you crazy? I've got your favorite restaurant to deliver it, and Dinah can eat it when it's hot." Andrew Red, "Are you crazy?" There was a group of people kneeling outside, but he asked me if I had eaten dinner. It was the most noisy we had. Later, I put the title deed under the bed, and never took it out again. The next day, I received the money from the sale of the house, and I was so happy that I jumped in bed. It's not a good start. Andrew Red has become a tool for cooking and making money, and I can do it just by lying down. The system wondered. No matter how you look at it, it's the villain who is raising you. I scoffed. Leave it alone. I stomped to my feet, and ordered takeout on the couch. But he swept a note on the coffee table, "The meal is in the refrigerator, and you can eat it when it is hot." He got up early this morning to cook and then go to school. I opened the fridge suspiciously. The silence of the system was deafening. In my previous life, I only got 100,000 yuan, and at that time I felt that I couldn't sit back and eat. So I went to find a job as a cashier. Now that I don't have a class, I still feel a little empty. So after I finished my meal, I decided to visit Andrew Reed's school. The school where the protagonist group is located came in so easily. I confessed to the system that I just wanted to come to the show. It stands to reason that today should be the time for Andrew Red to heroically save the United States. The unusual feelings of the male and female protagonists were known by other classmates, and some people began to bully the female protagonists. Then it sparked Andrew Reed's desire to be protective and possessive. Since then, Andrew Red villain has been working on getting the heroine. To be honest, it's boring. Super possessive. It is commonplace for him. Andrew Red is a character who can't predict his behavior, according to the brains of ordinary people. For example, now, he is actually studying hard. The heroine was poured into soup chicken in the corridor, just through a window, and he actually turned a deaf ear. I took advantage of the confusion to walk over, And as a high school graduate, I usually just gave up the last math problem. But he actually wrote 3 ideas for solving the problem. Big villain. You want to take the Tsinghua exam. Finally, the system realizes that the plot is not right. The male protagonist was brought over, and the school bullying stopped. I sat at the back table of Andrew Red, and watched the story unfold in the hallway, unaware that Andrew Red had turned around. Have you eaten? I was startled for a moment before I withdrew my gaze from the hallway. Heh. Andrew Red didn't seem surprised at all that I was behind him. He pointed to my lips. You still like spicy food? I pursed my lips. It seemed to be a little spicy and swollen. I suddenly felt a little annoyed. Who told you to make such a big portion? Andrew Red smiled. Laugh at the fart. I got up and was leaving. Sister, can you wait for me to leave after school? Before I could say whether I could wait or not, the class bell rang. After nodding hurriedly, I walked out of the classroom quickly. After walking around the school, the food stalls at the school gate have been set up. The bustling students began to walk outside the school. At the inconspicuous school gate, I saw 2 conspicuous figures. Andrew Red is tall and thin, and he looks outstanding. Next to her is a heroine with a high ponytail, and they seem to be chatting about something. Andrew Red took something out of his pocket, and gave it to the heroine. Far apart, I can't see clearly, and I was afraid that they would find out about me, and start running back. I was walking fast, and I didn't know what I was hiding. Yes, even if Andrew Reed's personality has changed drastically, how can you break through the setting of the program and not love the heroine? He is quite smart in his life, knows how to study hard, and is not so gloomy and irritable. Maybe the heroine will really choose him. The system comforted me. It's okay. You can at least complete the task. Before I leave, I'm going to destroy all of Andrew Reed's possessions. In my last life, I went to a banquet with Andrew Red. I learned that he wasn't as irritable to everyone as he was to me. He can be very patient to listen to the heroine before expressing his views on recent industry developments. When the heroine asks questions, she will answer questions to the heroine. My haute couture dress and global limited edition bag suddenly became less flashy because I couldn't understand what they were discussing. I was a little depressed. Afterwards, Andrew Red said, "You came with me. Are you angry?" I replied, "I'm so angry. I don't know how many of your peers handed me business cards." I took out more than a dozen contact information of the big guy from my bag, and Andrew Reed's face darkened. "You dare to try. You see if I dare." I didn't add it later because I didn't feel like they were as much as Andrew Red. And Andrew Red was supposed to pay off his debts. Pay off the debt I raised him for. I sold the house before and there are still 100,000 left, which is not enough for the 2 of us. My salary as a cashier also covers our living expenses. Andrew Red is expanding his business footprint, and I know he's competing with the male lead. Until he started doing something shady, I stopped him. But I didn't. Actually, I could have left a long time ago. It's just that I can't rest assured. I think I can't really raise him. Later, the quarrel became more and more violent, and he locked me up again. Dinah let me go. I suddenly got a little tired and wanted to go to the beach. "Oh, then you die." These words echoed in my ears. I stared at the door viciously. Andrew Red knocked on the door more frequently than in a hurry, to a rhythmic one. The message to me starts with, "What's wrong?" It became, "Sort me out." Okay. After falling asleep in a daze, his whole body was cold, as if he was being carried by the endless sea. The sea water burrowed into my nose and lungs. Huge undersea monsters want to devour me. Help me. Suddenly I woke up. My stomach was churning. I rolled out of bed and threw up with a wow. Jill Matthew. Jill Matthew. Can I kick the door? Andrew Red heard the noise and slammed on the door. Kicking the door is a lot of money. I crawled to the door with all my strength and opened it. Andrew Red dropped his bag, and ran downstairs with me on his back. Voice-activated lights sounded behind him, and Andrew Red seemed to be breathing more hurriedly than mine. Jill Matthew, hold me up. Don't leave me. Don't leave me behind. Why doesn't Andrew Red call me sister again? In his previous life, he was reluctant to call his sister a few times. When I became an adult, I even called him Jill Matthew. When he called me sister, it was when he was still well behaved. But then, when he was angry, he said, "Jill Matthew, come down for me to eat." Jill Matthew, How dare you go to those inconsistencies? Jill Matthew, do you have to go against me? I was naive enough to think that Andrew Red might just be worried about me, but he is obviously so gentle to the heroine. When I was sent to gastric lavage, I never saw Andrew Red like that. Whether it is the appearance of black and indifferent in the previous life, or the appearance of pretending to be pitiful in this life, he now seems to be just a kid who has been robbed of his favorite toy. I stood there and watched as I was taken into the operating room. After washing my stomach, I was tired and sore. Black-hearted fried skewer boss. I'll smash his stall tomorrow. I don't know why, but I feel like Andrew Red is angry. Was it because I deliberately shut him out? But I'm sick. For his sake of taking me to the hospital this time. Okay, I'll just soften it once. Okay, I'm sorry. Andrew Red reached out and hugged me, and patted me on the back. You're okay? I'm not angry. I'm scared. Andrew Red stayed with me, for as long as I was in the hospital. I was really embarrassed. And my aunt in the same ward told me every day that I had such a brother. The two sisters and brothers are really good looking. And now the children are disobedient. Your younger brother is really sensible. While Andrew Red was away, I immediately complained. No, he's also disobedient. When the aunt heard this, she was interested. What do you say? I've been on a liquid diet for the past few days, and I've been thinking about one thing. Thinking about it, he said. You know what? I used to love a malatang. Later, I realized that the taste was getting more and more wrong, so I never ate it again. Later, I found out that he took down the spicy hot plate, and forced the master to make me a clean and healthy spicy hot pot. Don't you think he's excessive? Also, I didn't wake up in the morning, and he actually asked my aunt to wake me up at 9 o'clock for breakfast. I think he's torturing me. Auntie's expression became more and more wrong. To prove Andrew Reed's guilt. Also, I was going to give him a birthday present, and he lost his temper with me, so I didn't give him it. The aunt asked, is it an important gift? A sweet. I was a little weak-hearted, even though I bought it with Andrew Reed's money. Finally, Auntie's expression was normal, and she commented, indeed, it's still a weird child. Suddenly I felt eerie behind me, and I didn't know when Andrew Red was already behind me. He raised an eyebrow and still had the bill in his hand, as if waiting for me to explain. I was dumbfounded, hurriedly whispered, it's not you, it's just that there was a bad boy who bullied me before. I was stupid, forget it. You're just talking nonsense to me. Not anymore. I wondered, what? I won't bully you. When I heard that the black-hearted boss was administratively detained, I lay on the sofa and clapped my hands. It's really a good reincarnation in heaven. It's a pity I didn't go to smash the stall. Andrew Red fried scallion oil in the kitchen. Fragrant me. Smashed. He brought out the scallion oil noodles and said calmly, who did that? I smashed it. I lowered my head and ate the noodles silently. I forgot that the person in front of me is the top villain. Wasn't he the one who did all the things that were boiling in the city before? After thinking about it, look at the portion of this bowl of scallion oil noodles. I kindly reminded, don't do that again. Yes, okay, I don't know why, but I always felt that he should be obedient this time. It doesn't matter if you pretend to be it. Anyway, I'll leave when I raise it. I'll take advantage of this time to squeeze him. I put down the chopsticks and wiped my mouth. I'm going to eat pork ribs tomorrow. Not tomorrow. I was shocked that this was the first time, in this time that Andrew Red had rejected me. Why? Tomorrow's college entrance examination. Ribs are too time-consuming. If I come back in the evening and do it, it will probably be done in the early morning. Eating in the early hours of the morning is not good for your health. His reason is that eating in the early hours of the morning is not good for his health. I almost jumped up from the couch. It turns out that I will take the college entrance examination tomorrow. Andrew Red, his ancestor, was still washing dishes slowly in the kitchen. I hurried over and grabbed the bowl. You can review it quickly. It dawned on my conscience that it seemed that he had been doing the housework all along. Andrew Red looked at me solemnly. Do you still want to go to Beijing? Heh. Before my mind could turn, Andrew Red walked out of the kitchen as if he was afraid that I would refuse. Throw down the next sentence. I'll just take your consent. Heh. I was left alone in the kitchen, slowly reminiscing. He asked, do you still want to go to Kyoto? But according to the timeline of my rebirth, I haven't been to Beijing yet. In the 2 days of the college entrance examination, Andrew Red made breakfast, lunch and dinner and put them in the refrigerator. He could even guess what I wanted to eat. By the next day, I walked around the school gate. For the sake of him cooking for me, I'll take this villain home. The students came out one after another, and the reporter interviewed 3 people at random. Of course, I found a good-looking protagonist group and a villain. The reporter stopped them and asked the 3 of them what they wanted to do after the college entrance examination. Heroine, let's go on a trip. Male protagonist, confess to the person you like. Villain, confess to the person you like. It just so happened that the heroine blushed in the midst of them. Mentally retarded plot. Andrew Red, look at your worthless look. I went to the bank that afternoon and withdrew the money from my card. By the way, I ate a spicy tang on the side of the road. It was only when I ate malatang that I realized that my appetite was being nourished by Andrew Red. The greens are too old and the meat is not fresh. It doesn't matter. Sooner or later you have to get used to it. Anyway, back in the real world is to eat these. And there are no previous large villas, limited edition bags, and high-end dresses that are only worn once. You have to get used to it. The real chill is not making a fuss. Early the next morning, Andrew Red returned with a large bag of ingredients. Eat today. He didn't finish. I handed him an envelope. This is the money from the sale of the house. And there are 36,000 left. What? I relented. That's what it means to part ways. Anyway, you've grown up, and you don't need me to raise you. Although you are handsome, you can also cook deliciously. But I really don't want to get involved in all that bloody affair between you and the protagonist group. He asked, do you still eat the ribs? I saw his ingredients swallow clearly, and said very spinlessly, eat. The last meal. Andrew Red walked into the kitchen with the ingredients in his hand, looking very calm. When others see him like this, they may think that he has a stable temper. Only I know that he is holding back his anger, and it may explode in the next second. He knew what I meant, but he just asked me if I had eaten. Just like in the previous life, it's clear that you're going to quarrel in the next second. The last second was asking me if I had eaten dinner. Eat, 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 no to eat. In the kitchen, he paddled abalone. Suddenly he turned his head and asked me, you came to school yesterday. Why did you leave again? And I saw you eating fried skewers before, and you left too, and you didn't wait for me to get out of school. Are you too embarrassed to ask? I walked the corner, and I didn't wait. I didn't bother to wait. I said viciously, did you hear what I interviewed yesterday? I mumbled, just in case you hear me through. What I'm talking about is confessing to someone you like and cooking for her. And that day, I gave her back what she gave me. Andrew Red was still washing the dishes, as if he were talking about something commonplace. It's just that his hands are shaking, and I only catch the key word cooking. I asked angrily, you're cooking for Sophia too? When? Sophia is the heroine of this book. In our previous lives, we often quarreled because of this person, and he did those gray things for the heroine and the male protagonist. I couldn't persuade him, and the more I persuaded him, the more angry he became. So when I mentioned the heroine, I was sure that there would be a big fight today. Andrew Reed's hand stopped shaking when he heard me ask. It was as if the body had stagnated for a while. Suddenly he smiled behind my back. I don't know why he laughed, but I wondered there wasn't a fight this time. After a long time, he looked at me very gently. No, just for you. I was stunned for a moment. Did he find out that I had deducted 100,000 yuan from the sale of the house? Is it so obvious? The meal was very weird. I don't know why. Andrew Reed's eyes kept nailing me, eager to see through my whole being. I ate 2 large bowls of rice, in an uncomfortable state. Can we not part ways today? It's my birthday. Andrew Red was very sincere. No matter how thick-skinned you are, you should be embarrassed at this time. Andrew Red had his birthday today, and not only did I forget, but I also let him spend most of the day in the kitchen. Don't use this reason to avoid contradictions. I didn't prepare a gift for you anyway. I deliberately said it strongly. It's okay, I've received the best. I looked at Andrew Red, and felt that something was wrong. I can't say how I feel. It's like a toy that a child has been thinking about, and it's finally back in his hands. His eyes couldn't leave it for a moment. It is a kind of reunion, the joy of being lost and regained. Can I hold you today? It's my birthday. I sat on the sofa after eating, and felt sleepy. And when I heard this, my sleepiness was gone. Before he could react, he heard Andrew Reed's heartbeat close at hand. After the whole person was hugged by him, I was about to break free from the refusal, but he looked pitiful. Can I kiss you today? It's my birthday. It's the other way around. But in the face of Andrew Reed's good-looking and bright, but aggrieved eyes, my whole body softened. I suspect he drugged me in the meal. I'm still thinking about it, and the overwhelming kiss has been covered, robbing my breath and invading my thoughts. As I was about to drown, Andrew Reed reluctantly parted and let me breathe. I gulped down the fresh air, and he smiled again. It's the second time. Why can't I breathe? His words were like a bolt from the blue, as if he had drawn a crucial auxiliary line for me in a geometry-proof problem. Finally, I figured it out. Andrew Reed was also reborn. The system is finally online at this time. The familiar voice of electricity told me. Central procedures have confirmed that this person in front of me is 30-year-old Andrew Reed. I learned that in the 3rd year of your death, 30-year-old Andrew Reed jumped into the sea and made a birthday wish to see Jill Matthew again. The program sensed his powerful mood swings and malfunctioned. So you've all been re-put into this plane. Why do you want to make such a wish? It's already all over the city, and it's so ugly. Why do you want to do it again? I was close to the answer, and I seemed so clumsy. I asked the system, why did he always do that to me in my previous life? He knew I was doing it for his good. System, the system has known for a long time that you are here to do a mission. If you follow Andrew Reed's character, he'll hate you. The system then denied the answer, but we didn't detect any hatred. He just loved a little bitterly. So he's going to follow the plot line. He's going to make you worry about him. He's going to make you suffer as much as he is. And he's smart. He should have figured out, as long as you're still worried about him, you won't leave this world so quickly. So he does those things all the time. So he keeps arguing with me. I held back my crying and asked the system, but he let me die in the end. He knew it meant you were leaving, so he said it. Andrew Reed, you're so smart. Later, after Jill Matthew jumped into the sea, Andrew Reed was like he was gambling with something, proving that he could live well. The Walking Dead to the 3rd year. On his 30th birthday, he jumped into the sea. The birthday wish is to see her again. He found out that he had never won in front of Jill Matthew. In the 3 years without Jill Matthew, the coastline and longing went one after the other. The system finally commented, 2 stupid people, who don't know how to love. No wonder they made such an ugly mess in their last life. The system told me that there were no more tasks. This time, the plot line is not in their hands, because it is Andrew Reed's birthday wish. But whenever I want to go, it will open up the path of reality for me. Andrew Reed was nervous the day he got out of the college entrance exam. I ate 1 bowl less rice than usual. He looked indifferent and slowly entered the admission ticket number. I couldn't see any results, and my eyes were dark. What's going on? System failure. What about your grades? You said you were bragging to go to Beijing. Right. You also lied to me when you said you wanted to take me to live in a big house. I shook Andrew Reed, who was still laughing vigorously. Silly, sober me up. He pulled me over and sat on his lap. The last sentence at the bottom of the page reads, the province is ranked 9th, and the results are on hold. Can it still be like this? I realized what Andrew Reed's smile meant, gritted my teeth and frowned. Andrew Reed, are you laughing at me? No, I love you. The end.